This is the Soft Power Podcast, episode 20. Hi, I'm Susan Callender, and thanks for joining me today. There was a little chill in the air this morning, and even though Labor Day is a few days away and there are several more weeks remaining for summer, the imminent change of seasons got me thinking about changes coming for many of you. I've heard you loud and clear, so I know that there have been major changes in how you work and where you work. At the time of this recording, in locations around the world, it's still up in the air whether your children will remain in the physical school buildings or if you have to make a plan because they're at home where you're also doing your best to perform your job as if everything is fine. And to all the college students who tune into the podcast, we know that campus interactions are far from what the college experience should be. And that's all a lot to handle, particularly when connecting face-to-face with professional peers, professors, customers, and superiors weighs heavily in terms of how you're perceived and what rewards you receive, just based on how well you connect with people. You know that feeling you have when a certain person enters the room, or these days when they log into the virtual meeting? There are certain people that just make you feel great from the moment you lay eyes on them. One thing we can't deny is that for a lot of the population, jobs and placements have become more competitive, infinitely more so than during the last recession, now over a decade ago. That means building relationships, actually nurturing them, has gone from being a nice-to-have skill to actually a critical one. So think about it for a moment. How are your interpersonal skills? Do you communicate clearly? Are you concise? Or do people give you that look that basically it's begging you to bring this one in for a landing? Do you make compelling statements that cause people to pause and think? I used to spend so much time admiring the social and relationship building skills of certain friends that I admired, and I thought being able to enter into a conversation looking and feeling confident was a skill they were born with, actually a gift, just reserved for a select few. My life changed when it finally dawned on me that I could learn how to do that too. People skills are not something you're either born with or not. You can learn the most appropriate communication skills for where you are currently and beyond at any age and for any purpose. Today I'm going to share with you just the basic blueprint for capturing the interest, respect, and support of the people that you engage with. One of the most important factors to creating solid relationships is your ability to show sincere interest in the person and the things that are important to that person. That's important because talking about yourself is not necessarily of great interest to someone else. And if you're thinking, well, Susan, that doesn't count in a job interview, and to that, I would say how important it is in an interview to balance speaking about yourself and mentioning the value that you as a candidate bring to that particular role. When you show genuine interest in someone's experience, their accomplishments, their background, their stories, their hobbies, or anything else closely connected to that person, it makes them feel seen and heard and understood, and that is like giving them a gift. So connecting with people can mean anything from your first meeting or introduction to that person initially appearing on your radar. But also keep in mind an even more basic understanding of what it means to connect. When you think of connecting, I want you to think of the energy that occurs when you flip an electrical switch. Connecting with another person will give you that jolt of power, and it lights you up and it illuminates the other person as well. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we could enter conversations knowing that people are positive and charged up to meet us, and we're feeling the same way? When you bring energy into a situation, whoever's in the room can feel it. Even those you're not focused on will feel compelled to turn and acknowledge you. This example, using currents and electricity as your power source, shouldn't sound so far-fetched because you've done the very same thing and likely more times than you can possibly count. I'll use another example. Let's say you're in a somewhat crowded space, pre-COVID, haha, and you have a feeling wash over you that someone's looking at you, and you turn and you look across the room, perhaps 20 or so people away, and there is indeed only one person who catches your eye, and they're directly and intently looking at you, and they make quick, solid eye contact before looking away quickly. That, my friends, is power. It's pure energy in action. Some people call it your vibration, and for our purposes today, it's the frequency you feel when you know you've made a connection with someone who's not just on the same wavelength as you, but it's likely you'll have a synergistic conversation. And that is just the perfect thing that you want. A hang up that some people have, particularly when speaking to more than one person, is the concern that their voice doesn't sound good enough or strong enough, especially in comparison to someone they admire or they may be a competitor. And I should make it clear that when I use the word competitor, there's no negative involved, no conflict of any kind or a higher, lower type of hierarchy. I'm just referring to people who want the same thing or a similar outcome that you desire. I just wanted to mention that because a listener asked that question in a recent Facebook Live. Do you ever pause to think about how your voice sounds to others? You know you can easily record yourself on your phone and play it back to get a taste for how you sound. Real-time feedback from someone else you trust would be much better, particularly if it's necessary to modulate your tone. Voice modulation is when you control or adjust your voice either for a particular occasion or purpose. For example, if you're preparing for what you consider to be a difficult conversation, it's when you choose to go louder or softer, faster or slower, or be dramatic or emotional that it really counts. On the other hand, if from time to time, if you're told that your voice is too loud or maybe too childlike, depending on the outcomes you want in life and business, you may consider lessons or coaching on how to change your voice more long term. For a woman, it may mean ensuring that your voice doesn't trail off when you're making a request that may be difficult for you to bring up in conversation. Another could be uptalk, or in other words, speaking like a Kardashian. Basically, everything you say sounds like a question, and as a result, it makes you sound like you're not really sure of yourself. And then the other one, on the other hand, is vocal fry, or as people refer to it, the verbal tick of doom. I will not even attempt to do vocal fry because it's very bad for your vocal cords. And thankfully, it's not as popular now as it was a few years back, and both males and females could kiss their chances away of connecting with someone in a high-stakes situation who was not in their generation when using both vocal fry and uptalk to communicate. These are all examples of modulation, or using your voice and tone to communicate your message more effectively. Without voice modulation, you could, and some do, speak in a continuous, monotonous pitch or tone. We generally modulate our voice for the different purposes throughout the day, and that's a good thing. Problems only arise when your brain tells you there's something to fear, and it makes it hard for you to effectively use your tone and pitch to make the great impression that you intended in the first place. The basics of communicating well with good people skills that ensure people don't walk away or end a conversation abruptly aren't new, but they are important to always remind yourself of, like having a warm and approachable demeanor. They're all important. People who communicate with a friendly tone and a nice smile almost have the upper hand. The reason is simple. We're subconsciously drawn to people who are friendly because they make us feel good, and we anticipate them bringing some levity and an upbeat presence to our lives. It's always worth it, always, to consider your words in advance, at least your opener and main point. So many people think going with the flow and saying whatever is top of mind without putting any thought into it is the best course of action. And that's just not true. And they say things that end up reflecting poorly on themselves. Now, to be sure, it's not possible to plan in advance for the majority of impromptu conversations we have in a given day. But know that you're the one who's in control of your thoughts and your pauses. And there's no rule stating you're not allowed to stop and think before you speak. When you take a moment to think before speaking, you appear more level headed, much more thoughtful than a person who's always quick on the draw, and you give yourself the benefit of clarity. Our multitasked minds don't necessarily want to waste energy trying to figure out what someone's saying. So, clear and concise messaging is the key to convincing others to listen to you and to take action or any number of desired outcomes that you have for them. When you're indirect or have a tendency to hint rather than being forthright, you lose respect. I think it's always worth your time to clean up whatever it is that you have to say. I found that people who have a tendency to be generally quiet or introverted at times cannot stop talking. It's like they found a much sought after level of comfort with you and they don't know when to wrap it up. To be fair, a lot of people don't know how to manage a clear, concise conversation and end it before you become a bore. Some common over-talking traps include talking about yourself. That's because when we talk about ourselves, our brains release dopamine, which is the pleasure hormone. And since we know ourselves so well, it's like we're immediately rewarded when we share details that are completely needless to someone else. Talking to show how much you know is not going to help you connect with people either, and it's not going to improve your interpersonal skills. Proving your knowledge to uninterested parties, ironically, tends to undermine your credibility rather than building it. It can also have a negative impact on your likability, and you don't want that to happen because your likability score is one of the key factors in how we evaluate people. And simply talking out of nervousness or insecurity is a big over-talking trap. That usually occurs because of insecurity and anxiety, and when you can't self-manage, it shows. When you find yourself in the same business networking or social circles as the person you want to meet, it's almost certain that you share some interest. Also, you'll have the same values or preferences possibly, and the experiences that you have will resonate. It's almost certain that you or someone you know could help that person or someone they know, and the same for them. There's already value there just waiting to be discovered, and value flowing between people strengthens relationships. This realization alone allows you to arrive knowing there's value to be found and a relationship that's ready to grow. So before your interactions begin, choose a couple of thoughts that will help you be more of who you are genuinely and at your best, and how you want to represent yourself. Those great, charismatic, and seemingly well-connected people that you admire often base their success on one-to-one communication. And I'm including both face-to-face and virtual in that. What they're doing is relying on the most basic interpersonal relationship building skills like practicing humility and becoming a better listener to increase the depth of their communications. Learning these skills can help you connect more profoundly with other people. But we have a problem in Western culture, and that is in addition to a large percentage of workers preferring to work remotely as a result of the pandemic, we don't sufficiently value building human relationships. Too many professionals communicate poorly and don't take the time to correct their shortcomings or ask for input from someone they trust. They're so focused on having the contract signed and getting the deal that they can be months or years into a business relationship and not fully understand why that person is no longer an ally or why they decided to jump ship. It's all communication and creating solid relationships. I once heard the story of how Walt Bettinger, who's the CEO of Charles Schwab, failed his final exam in business school. The question worth the most points asks the name of the person who cleaned the building. And after all the years and days and hours he spent in that building, day and night, Bettinger had never asked her name. And that is a brief but impactful lesson in how everyone matters to some degree and how it's worth your time to raise your likability score once again with everyone you come in contact with. No one's invisible. People who get the importance of communicating well and clicking with people in their world know how to endear themselves to others from the second the connection's made. They understand the importance of presenting themselves as being genuine and interested. And when you do this, people will see you as someone they want to have a conversation with and a person that they want to help in any way they can. Soft Power Society, if you struggle to make small talk or to increase your circle of friends, Social Skills Secrets was written just for you. It's full of actionable step-by-step guidance to help you live the full and fun life that's intended for you. You can get your free copy at businessclass.expert/social. Thanks for joining me today. Bye for now.